Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Richard Burke, Executive Director of Western Liberty Network, and I'd like to welcome you all to the latest in an ongoing series of Saturday Zoom training sessions sponsored by Western Liberty Network. It is Saturday, October 16th, 1:02 p.m., and we have 5 people online so far, in addition to myself. I'd like to encourage those watching the video to feel free to interject at any time. If you want to unmute your microphone, ask a question or offer a comment, please do. And when you're finished, remute your microphone so that we will minimize the chance of feedback, echoes, and other things that will compromise the audio quality of the call. I'm going to share my screen now, as I always do, to show the Western Liberty Network website. I'd like to encourage everyone who wants to know more about Western Liberty Network to check out the website. On the website, you'll see what we're working on right now. Training session that we're going to provide today in a few minutes. And then going downwards, there's information about the various events we have held. Also, there are training materials available here as well. There's speakers you can click on and listen to the recordings of various speakers during previous conferences, and some of those are really interesting. But anyway, you can see what we've been up to and what we're going to be up to. And sometime this week, there'll be a new post about our February 5th annual conference that we're going to have. We've got another user coming in named Zoom User. Welcome. And if you would like to take a look at our training materials, you can click on the training tab and you'll go to this page. This talks about the kinds of trainings we provide. And then down here, you can download PDF documents. These documents are designed to be provided along with live trainings, but they stand up on their own as well. So if you're looking for training in a particular topic and you see the topic listed here, then you can click on it and you'll get a nice PDF document with some good information for you. If you scroll down a little further, you'll see recordings of our Saturday training sessions. Today's session will be recorded and will be posted up here by the end of the day today. But we've got a whole bunch of them going back almost a year. And we've got a lot of experts who have spoken on various topics. And we've now put the date and the topic at the top of each session. So all you have to do is click on the one you're interested in and it will start to play. On the side here are just photos of different things that have taken place at WLN events. And if you like what you see, click on Support WLN and you can make a one-time or a monthly recurring contribution by clicking on one of these options right here. All contributions to Western Liberty Network are tax deductible, as Western Liberty Network is a 501c3 organization. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing the screen. And again, if you have a question that you would like to ask, feel free to unmute your microphone, ask the question. You can interrupt, it's okay, or you can ask a question on the chat window and I'll get to those as fast as I can. So anyway, today will be a short training on how to detect lies and how to detect liars. We like to think that most people are honest. Most people tell the truth. Sometimes they don't. And this is particularly true in politics. We know that we can probably all come up with lots of examples of where politicians have lied or might lie. And this is not just true of politicians, but it can be true of bureaucrats. It can be true of friends, family members, people who are interviewing for a job, or people who are making promises if you are interviewing for a job. I mean, there's just no there's no shortage of incidents where this will be, where this won't be useful. And in this context, it'll be for policymakers, board members, representatives of government, and so on. Now, I'm going to be quoting a lot of work from Thomas Omerod. Thomas Omerod is an expert in security, and he works in airports, and his job is to train people to detect folks that are lying about their destination, their intention, why they're coming into a country, with the effort of trying to suss out terrorists. And there are things that work and things that do not work. And a lot of the things that we use to tell if people are telling us the truth just don't work. What do we look at? Typically, you look at things like body language. When someone's talking to you, do they appear nervous? Are they fidgeting with their hands a lot? Look at their eyes. If they're telling you something and their eyes dart to the side, are they lying with you, or are they lying? There are a lot of things like that are sort of myths as to how to detect liars, and they generally just don't work. This gentleman, Thomas Omerod, regularly hires people with false storylines, and their job is to go through airports around the world and give false information and see if their lies are detected by the employees. And this is how he sort of develops his company's technique. And what they found was that in one case, they were able to detect only 1 out of 1,000 people using techniques that we typically use ourselves to determine if somebody is lying. And otherwise, according to one study, just 50 out of 20,000 people managed to make a correct judgment with more than 80% accuracy.
Wow.
Detecting things like body language and facial expressions. However, Omerod's team then tried something different and managed to identify fake passengers in the vast majority of cases. Again, just to touch on some of these body language items that are sort of mythical, there are some famous ones. Bill Clinton was famously noted for touching his nose when he lied about his affair with Lewinsky. Okay, that was seen as a tell. And there are lots of micro expressions, darting eyes, nervous laugh, blushing cheeks. None of that really works on a consistent basis. And one of the reasons for that is because human behavior is so incredibly diverse. A lot of it is cultural. A lot of it is cultural, and people who have body tics often have body tics for completely different reasons. It's just who they are. Maybe they have a nervous personality generally. Some of it's cultural too, like making direct eye contact in some cultures is considered rude. Other ones is considered very important. So these things generally just don't work. So there are some things you can do when you're talking with someone to try and suss out if they're lying. And one of the techniques is to use open-ended questions. Okay, for example, if they're trying to sell you on an idea, and it's not really their idea, or they haven't thought it through very well, or they're misrepresenting it. One of the things you can ask is, well, tell me about what the original inspiration was that led you to come up with this idea. And that's going to force them to come up with a narrative on the fly. It's going to force them to come up with things on the fly, and they're going to have to develop a story if they're lying to you about something. There are a lot of, hold on just a second. I'm going to make sure everybody's muted here. Go ahead and unmute yourself if you want to chat. So this is something that you can do. Ask open-ended questions that requires the liar to develop a narrative. If they can have a story that's consistent, that tells you something. But if they have a narrative, look for inconsistencies. Look for things that you can ask follow-up questions about. That is something that you can do. Another thing too is to employ the element of surprise. If somebody is lying to you, especially if it's an elaborate lie, they're maintaining a network of things in their mind. It's called their cognitive load. And what you want to do is disrupt their ability to process their cognitive load or increase their cognitive load. So one of the things you can do is when you're asking questions, maybe you're asking questions about a politician's stand on Social Security. They've come to you with what they say is their belief. You're asking them questions about their belief system. Well, what made you come up with this reform proposal? Why do you think this is important? You know, all these open-ended questions that force them to create a narrative. They are assuming, if they're lying, a cognitive load. So, and they're maintaining it moment to moment. So if you can throw them off their rhythm, that sometimes creates a slip. And one way you can do that is by asking them a question that has nothing to do with the topic you're discussing. For example, if they're talking to you about a Social Security proposal that you think they're being less than honest about, and you're asking them some open-ended questions about their Social Security proposal, then stop and say, you know, getting away from this for a second, I'd like to know more about you. Tell me about your family, or tell me about the first job you ever had, or something like that. Some question that has nothing to do with what they are relating to you about, that causes them to stop and put their cognitive load to the side for a second and bring up something new. Then when they're done talking about that something new, they have to bring their cognitive load back. And when they bring their cognitive load back, go back and revisit it and say, like, oh, if I understood, you know, getting back to the topic, if I understood you correctly, you said this, or you said that. And they might slip, they might trip themselves up, they might fall into their web of lies, and if they're lying. And, you know, if they're telling the truth, they're not going to have a problem with any of this. You know, if they're telling the truth, they're going to give you good information, and it's not going to change. You will not find inconsistencies. You might have misunderstandings and need to seek clarification, but you're not going to see clear inconsistencies. And if you take them off their topic for a second, when they come back, what they say and what they represent to you isn't going to change. Another thing you can do to detect a liar is to watch for small verifiable details. For example, if someone says they're at the University of Oxford or Carnegie Mellon University, ask them to tell you about their time there. Ask them to tell you about their journey of work while you were there. You know, for example, Vika, who's on this call right now, she just did a short stint at Oxford. And if I was talking to her about it and I wasn't sure if she was being completely honest, I would like to say, well, tell me more about your time at Oxford. You know, where did you stay and how long did you stay? What did you do when you were there? And if she's lying about being at Oxford, which she isn't because she was at Oxford, she would trip and she would have to think and she'd have to come up with a narrative. And again, you're adding to the cognitive load. So if there are, you know, 3 or 4 things that they have said in their story that are verifiable, you're not necessarily going to call up, you know, people what they say and ask them to verify it, although you could. What you're going to do is you're going to ask some questions about that. And if they're lying to you about those details, that's going to become apparent because they're not going to be able to fill in the blanks very well. And then if they're lying about that, it's a good indication that they're lying about other things as well. You know, but if you do find a contradiction, don't give yourself away. It's better to allow the liar's confidence to build as they rattle off more falsehoods rather than correcting them. So, you know, it's an old saying in politics that if your opponent is undermining themselves, it is best not to get in their way. Likewise, you know, if a liar is telling you a story and they are telling you things that you know are not true, as you ask them details and ask them to verify and ask them to provide a narrative, let them keep going. Let them keep going. Let's see, you know, let them bury themselves as far as they can. And then you'll be able to deal with those things when you're finished, when you've properly fleshed them out, or you'll be able to simply reject them. Another thing too is to observe changes in confidence. Again, it's important to note that body language in and of itself is not necessarily a tell as to whether somebody is lying, but if there are changes in confidence while they are telling a story or while you are asking them questions, this is a good sign that something is amiss. It says here, a liar may be just as verbose when they feel in charge of a situation, but their comfort zone is limited and they may clam up if they feel like they are losing control of the interview. And the goal is always to have a casual conversation rather than an intense negotiation. So when you're talking to somebody you think they might be lying to, and you're using some of these techniques to try and draw them out, make sure you do not adopt the tone of somebody who's interrogating, that you're engaging, you're asking questions as part of just a casual conversation, to avoid them sort of being tipped off and clamming up. Let them continue to work against themselves. And that's gentle pressure. And liars will often give themselves away by contradicting their own story. The more they talk, the more they are likely to give themselves up, or by becoming obviously elusive or erratic. The thing that's important that they say in this report is that there is no single silver bullet in most cases. Sometimes, someone tells a whopper, they're very sloppy, and you can tell right away it's a lie. For example, if you happen to be someone that's in charge of a school board budget and somebody lies about having approved something for the school board budget, you've got direct knowledge that that's a lie. But usually there are no such silver bullets. And so what you're looking for is a pattern. You're looking for a pattern of confidence. You're looking for a pattern of fact disclosure that is verifiable. And you're also looking for the creation of narratives that seem implausible or impossible. So that's very important too. Now, excuse me. A lot of this might seem like common sense, and generally it is common sense, but it doesn't really become a tactic to find a liar or a lie unless you actually use these techniques with intent. And so, don't dismiss this as common sense. You have to be active in turning on your radar and also engaging with the person to give them, lots of opportunities to mess up. After looking at the results, officers trained in Omerod's techniques were more than 20 times more likely to detect fake passengers than people using suspicious signs, who only found them. The Omerod group found the liar 70% of the time, which was 20 times in this study. One expert, and what was his name? I'm trying to see what his name is here. I don't see that. They don't tell us what his name is, but using these techniques, he identified the liar 100% of the time in 33 interviews. So that's very impressive. That works really well. Another thing to do is to simply ask them how honest they are. When they've told you their story and you've asked them some questions, just ask something like, honesty is really important to me, and I am guessing it's important to you. So I would like to ask you, how honest do you think you are? And let them talk about how honest that they are. And what you want to look for there are large, sweeping claims. If somebody is frank and says, something, I'm not going to tell you I've never told a lie, or that I've, never misrepresented something or omitted something, but nobody's perfect, but I think I'm generally an honest person, would be a very, in my mind, a believable statement. If they start to say, I'm completely honest, I have a high regard for ethics in public office, and I've done this and I've done that, and they've made lots of sweeping claims, in these particular situations, look out. There's no foolproof form to detect lies, but using these things, you'll be able to get a lot of people to really trip themselves up. Surprisingly, the investigators used in this study, once they detected the lies, confronted the liars with the lies, and a surprising number of them acknowledged that they lied. That's really interesting. And one of the reasons why is because the people who are officers are also trained in persuasion. So if you are trained in how to detect lies, you get some practice in detecting lies. And you're also trained in how to persuade. You can sometimes get people to fess up. These are things you can practice. it says here that people want to think of being honest, that this ties into being cooperative. Even the people who weren't honest had difficulty pretending to be cooperative after this. So for the most part, you could see who was faking it. Excuse me. So there are a lot of things that you can try. Now, there are some things you can do to practice. And one of the things you can do is get a bunch of people together and ask them to write down a story about themselves that is true, but have them insert some lies. And then take turns pretending you're a person that's interviewing that person. Let them tell you their story, and then start asking them questions and start using these techniques. And it's a game, you know, after a couple of shots of tequila, it might even be a fun game, who knows? But, you know, have a little liar training party and come up with some things and see who is able to properly detect the lies and who can't detect the lies. But anyway, if you use these techniques and you get good at it, then this can be very helpful in a lot of different areas of your life, and certainly in the area of public policy. I've got a bunch of things like this that I've been looking at on this topic, and I don't have it ready yet. I will have it ready soon, but we're going to have a WLN training document just on this topic. And so when that is there, I'll make sure that it is released, and it will be one of the downloadable topics. Again, I'm going to go back to the share screen and go to the training page. The topic that I'm talking, the topic sheet, when it is posted, will be posted here where it says companion training documents. And this training, when the recording is complete, will be posted here under weekly WLN Saturday training sessions. So that is what I had. And so I'd like at this point to open it up to you folks for any comments, questions, and evaluations, whether this makes sense to you or not, whether you have experiences using any of these techniques or not, and other experiences you've had when detecting or failing to detect liars and lies. So does anybody have anything they'd like to add today?
Can you hear me?
Can do.
My name is James Goins, and I want to thank you for your training today. I went through your training back in 2020, and I'm the vice chair of the Yamhill County's Republican Party through your trainings, and I want to thank you for all that you do for us.
No, well, thank you very much. That's very kind.
Yes.
So you get the emails, obviously.
Yes, sir.
And okay, very good. And appreciate the kind words.
Well, I ran five campaigns and out of 11, and we won 5 out of 11 since 2020 using some of your techniques and stuff. And anybody that's listening, you should go through his big training course. It was so good.
Well, thank you. And, you know, I can't take all the credit myself. We have a whole stable of trainers that provide training on a variety of topics. And we throw it out there, people take it, and we see how it works. The good news is that it works. And
thank you, sir.
We have to do it more. Thank you very much. How about anyone else? Does anyone else have anything they'd like to add on the topic?
Hey, Richard, Victoria here.
Hey.
Thanks for the training. This is very fascinating. What are some ways that you have noticed that people lie from your personal experiences? Could you perhaps share?
Well, you know, I don't want to name names. You know, I don't want to risk a libel suit or a slander suit or anything like that. But I will tell you that I've been lied to a variety of times. Sometimes it's been by friends who were not as good of friends as I thought they were. Fortunately, most of my friends are very, very good friends. Sometimes it's been clients. Sometimes when I was working in the Senate for Senator Gary George, legislators and staff members would make commitments to do certain things that they never intended to keep. And so a lot of times I actually walked in kind of naive, kind of green. And I am the kind of person that I generally believe what people tell me. I generally extend the benefit of the doubt. And, you know, that's not always a good thing. I don't say that to aggrandize myself, because that sometimes can be naive and sets yourself up for failure. So, you know, while I do generally strive to give people the benefit of the doubt and take them at their word, I am a lot more careful, and I do watch for certain things. And sometimes what tips me off initially is something that is unreliable, and that is, body language. If they dart eyes, but those are cases where I might know the person and I know how they usually communicate. And if their eyes dart or there's some departure from that, then I know there might be something up. And it doesn't always mean there's a lie. It might be that the topic itself is stressful to the person, or that the commitment that they're making to you is something that's going to have potential negative consequences for them. Like if someone promises me $1,000 contribution to Western Liberty Network, but they're thinking to themselves, well, I'm going to do it, but my wife is going to be mad at me because she wanted to do something else with that money. That could explain why their eyes are darting. It doesn't mean that they're lying. That's why you got to be careful. But sometimes those things will put a question mark in my mind. And so I will start to ask additional questions, but I really have not used these techniques a lot myself. I've researched them very recently. And although I've heard of some of them before, I've never actively used them before. I take it that they are accurate because of the studies that are quoted in this document and the results that they achieved. But I'm going to be training myself, even as I'm training other people on these techniques, because although I don't want to think the worst of people, I do want to go in with eyes open and be ready to detect situations where things are represented to me in ways that are counterfactual, which is
Right.
a new favorite word of mine.
Counterfactual. That's a very soft word for that.
And yeah, that's another way. I actually heard a guy named M. Carling was a minor party political convention, and he was being lied to by somebody, but he wasn't trying to emotionally charge the situation. So he didn't say, "You're a liar." What he said is, "Some of the things you've told me are demonstrably counterfactual." And that's a more polite way of calling somebody a liar without actually using the L word. And so that is a word that is going to be in my vernacular going forward. So
yeah, you remind me of one fact, if I may add as well. There was a CIA study that found that the average person lies about 11 times a day.
is this one of those times?
So it's I think that this training is very useful, and I think we all should employ these tactics, especially with new people, especially with things that are of high stakes. Yeah, there's also a good quote: "Don't let people know what to expect from you," right? So I think having like having a little bit of like letting people know that you're observing them. I think that's generally like I think that's like a good soft way to keep things vetted. And I think some of these approaches, like even if they're not lying, it's kind of sending a signal, "Hey, I'm watching you."
That's right. That's right. And some lies are completely benign. Like, for example, if you're having a bad day and you just stubbed your toe and you're limping around a little bit, somebody asks,
yeah, that would
how you doing? They say, "How you doing?" And you might say, "Oh, I'm fine." That's a lie, right? But it's not the kind of lie that's going to end the world. But when you're talking about serious things with people, if you've got a son or daughter, "Where were you last night? You told me you were at the library." And this is a time to use those tactics. And so there are a lot of times in personal life, professional life, in civics, where this is an important skill. I do want to underscore, though, that I think it is the stronger and higher position to be able to extend people the benefit of the doubt, assume the best going into a situation, and generally try to take people at their word until they destroy their reputation by lying to you. And when you go into those situations, even though you go in assuming the best, be equipped to detect the worst. And once a reputation has been damaged, it's very, very hard to get it back. I think what the old saying is, it takes years to build a reputation, seconds to blow it. And I think we need more integrity, generally speaking, in our world. And we can make that happen, at least within our sphere of influence, by showing integrity ourselves, but also calling it out when we see people not showing integrity themselves. And that's what this training is really about. You've got to have, I mean, lies in politics and lies in civic life are legendary. It's always going to be a part of it. I mean, seeking complete honesty in civic life is like trying to seek world peace. Yes, you're probably never going to get there, but it doesn't mean you quit trying. It doesn't mean you quit inculcating and pressing forward to it. So we can make it a better world by being honest and by calling people out when they're not honest. And we will be able to do that, or at least have the option to do that, if we have the tools on hand. Is there anything else, Vika?
I don't think so, except I think there's a lot of different ways one can lie. As I'm thinking about it, like people misrepresent, people can take advantage of you, people can just be kind of full of themselves unduly. And
Sure.
so I think that these are great tactics, and yeah, very good to get inside. Thank you again.
Yeah, you bring up an interesting point. There are a lot of different kind of lies, like lies of omission. If I'm selling you a timeshare apartment somewhere and I tell you, yes, it's a beautiful lakeside apartment with lovely trees and lots of sun, but I forget to tell you that there are alligators and ogres crawling all over the property. That's a lie of omission, right? A lie of commission, when you're actually telling something that is that is false. It's also important to know what a lie is not. Sometimes it is possible to simply be wrong and state your opinion without it being a lie. For example, if I recall reading somewhere that $50,000 was allocated for a new park, but it was really $10,000, but I remember it as $50,000. Honestly, I'm out there telling something that's false, but that's not a lie, because I'm just wrong, right? Or who won the World Series in 1964? I could be wrong about that, but just being wrong doesn't mean I'm telling a lie. It's a lie if you tell something that is counterfactual and it's counterfactual. That is really what a lie of commission is, as opposed to the lie of omission. And there are misrepresentations. There are a lot of shades of lies. So it's important also to know what a lie is not, if you're talking with somebody. Being wrong is not necessarily demonstrative of character, unless they're shown that they're wrong. And if they own it, oh, I was wrong. Well, that shows character. And that can actually be, if someone's wrong, it can actually be an opportunity to demonstrate and build character.
Yeah.
What you're doing there. So,
yeah, I think one last final point I would say is that I noticed that people can be kind of weeded out. Like the liars can be seen for their true colors when you make a like a standard that you set, like you draw a line in the sand and say, hey, here is my invoice of what you owe me, or here is here is what I expect. And if they like wriggle around, it's pretty telling. Or sometimes they'll not answer you and not even say anything, and it's like, oh, well, I can see that
sure,
you are definitely not the person that you we started out with. So yeah, having that standard that you hold up, that I don't think there's anything wrong with having that standard, because take it or leave it, this is what I expect, and if somebody's not willing to meet it, they can go on their merry way.
Sure, absolutely, and they can lie to somebody else. But usually, over the long haul, most liars do hang themselves, or they are discovered to be people of lower character, and they usually end up weeding themselves out. But there are people who are exceptional liars and make careers out of it, and they're very hard to detect. It's kind of like certain organized crime figures. You might know that Billy Two Thumbs Malone is guilty of all kinds of racketeering crimes, putting out contracts, but you can't prove it, right? You can't prove it, but they go years and years and years without ever being nailed. There are people who are good liars and can figure it out. There are even people who can beat lie detector tests. In fact, when I was searching for this, I actually found pages on how to beat lie detector tests. There are folks that can do these things, and they're harder to detect. But again, even in those cases, it looks like these techniques will work much better than the ones that we're taught to use when we're young, and we continue to use when we're older. So does anyone else have something they'd like to add?
Yeah, this is Glenn. You mentioned calling people out. I had an experience where the physical evidence was in front of us and he was telling me something else.
Yeah.
We both knew he was lying.
Yeah.
And I point to something and he continues. He will not give up his reality.
Yeah.
Then what? I mean, and he was, like you say, accomplished enough that in a later time with someone else, he went to small claims court and won by changing the sequence of events slightly.
Yeah.
And it put the onus on the one he was suing. So I, short of hitting him in the head with a 2x4, what do you do?
He must have heard a song by a band called the Circle Jerks called "Deny Everything." And that's pretty much the whole song over and over again. This is a case where it's clear that the good guys in the white hats don't always win. I think in the arc of time, the good overcomes the bad in most cases, but not day to day. And for these cases, I would document, if someone's, turn the recorder on your phone, have someone take a video, have an email exchange where you establish certain facts, and, you can have a pattern of documentation that the other person can accept or deny. There are people who will not admit to anything if they're not compelled to. And this person was apparently not compelled to. You had physical evidence, but he continued to deny, and he held to that story. There probably was not documentation in small claims court that was able to show that this person changed the sequence of events to make themselves look better. So if you know you're dealing with a liar, watch yourself, document everything, record everything, and be prepared that even when everything is going your way, the good may not win. Was OJ guilty of murder? Okay. If you think he was, in this country, we accept the verdict of a jury, but if you think he killed the victim, then it's just evidence that the good guys don't always win. And so that's just a reality that we live with.
Yeah.
He was guilty.
He was guilty? I think he was probably guilty too.
He was guilty. What happened is he had a defense team. It buried everything, had 3, and they buried the DA's office in motions. So
Yep.
many motions they couldn't answer them.
Yep. The prosecution was just tremendously outclassed.
And they should have gone for a change of venue like Sacramento County.
Yeah. And some of the gestures were fantastic. If it doesn't fit, you must acquit. People remember that decades later. It was pretty amazing. Although I'm never happy when justice is not done, but I am happy we live in a country where if you're accused of a crime and you're presumed innocent, that it's possible to assemble a defense team that can outclass the prosecution. I'm glad, if I'm ever accused of a crime that I'm not guilty of, I'll be very grateful if I can assemble lawyers better than the prosecution. That said, though, I think that OJ was probably guilty too. Anybody else have anything to add? No? Okay, if that's the case, we'll bring this Saturday training session to a close. I want to thank you all for participating, and we'll be back with another topic next Saturday. And in the meantime, have a great week and God bless you all. Take care.